What happens when one of the most recognized women on earth, a celebrity whose every word is broadcast, suddenly forgets her carefully prepared speech inside one of the most powerful buildings in the world? The White House, a place of history, diplomacy, and power, witnessed something entirely unexpected. Kim Kardashian, a global icon, a business mogul, and a reality star turned activist, stood in front of an audience gathered to hear her speak about prison reform. But in that moment, the woman famous for control over her image lost her words. She forgot her White House speech, and the silence that followed was more powerful than anything she could have said. I was there watching it unfold. The scene had all the tension of a drama. Imagine the setting: the marble halls, the gold-framed portraits of past presidents, the heavy air of responsibility. Cameras clicked, pens hovered above notepads, and aides shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kim Kardashian, who had spent weeks preparing to deliver a message about prison reform, stood frozen. The words she had rehearsed, the sentences meant to inspire change, had vanished from her mind. It was not just a slip of memory. It was the clash of two worlds. On one side, the world of celebrity culture, where image is polished and perfection is rehearsed. On the other, the unrelenting reality of politics, where every misstep echoes far beyond the room. Kim Kardashian forgetting her White House speech became a moment that would be replayed, discussed, and scrutinized. But what most people didn't see was the meaning behind that moment. For Kim, prison reform was not just a headline or a passing cause. It was personal. Months before this White House appearance, she had fought for the release of Alice Johnson, a grandmother serving a life sentence for a non-violent drug offense. That victory had not only changed Alice's life, it had changed Kim. She had been mocked when she first entered the political space, accused of using her fame for relevance. Yet here she was, invited to the White House, standing in a room where decisions affecting millions are made. And then, at the very peak of this journey, her voice failed her. The silence inside the White House ballroom was deafening. For a split second, time itself seemed to pause. You could feel the eyes of Washington insiders and journalists fix on her, waiting to see whether she would crumble or recover. She smiled nervously, shifted her hands, and glanced at her notes. But the words didn't come. This was not the polished television moment the world was used to seeing. This was raw, real, and deeply human. And yet in that imperfection, something remarkable happened. Instead of walking away, Kim Kardashian spoke from her heart. Forgetting her White House speech forced her into honesty. The planned sentences dissolved, replaced by unscripted words about families torn apart, about lives lost to a justice system that punishes without mercy, about mothers who could not hold their children because of outdated laws. In that moment, she wasn't a celebrity reading lines. She was a woman pleading for change. The fight for prison reform is not glamorous. It is not photographed in fashion magazines or celebrated on red carpets. It is the story of overcrowded cells, of men and women waiting decades for a second chance, of families broken by mandatory minimums. And in the White House of all places, Kim Kardashian, famous for her beauty, her wealth, and her reality show, was the one demanding justice. The irony was striking, but the sincerity could not be denied. Observers whispered later that forgetting her speech might have been the best thing that happened to her, because in that brief lapse, she proved she was more than a rehearsed spokesperson. She was real. She cared. And no one could question the passion in her voice when she abandoned the script and let the cause speak through her. As she continued, her voice grew stronger. She talked about Alice Johnson, about the tears that fell when Alice walked free. She spoke of others still waiting behind bars, their names unknown to the public, their cases buried under bureaucracy. She emphasized that prison reform was not about politics, not about left or right, but about humanity. And in those words, spoken imperfectly but truthfully, the room shifted. You could feel it. People listened. To witness Kim Kardashian forget her White House speech was to see the vulnerability of someone stepping far outside her world of comfort. It was a reminder that fighting for prison reform demands courage, not the kind that poses for cameras, but the kind that stands trembling in front of power and refuses to back down. Outside the White House that day, protesters held signs. Families of incarcerated men and women pressed their faces against iron gates, hoping their cries might be heard. For them, prison reform was not an abstract debate, it was survival. Kim's presence inside the building gave their cause a voice it never had before. And even though she stumbled, even though she forgot her prepared words, her very presence was louder than perfection could ever be. The media later debated what had happened. Some mocked her, as they always did, calling her unqualified, unprepared, out of place. Others defended her, saying she had shown bravery. But those who were truly paying attention realized something deeper. Forgetting her speech was not a failure. It was a transformation. A celebrity had stepped into the harsh light of politics and revealed a truth. The fight for prison reform belongs to everyone, even those who were never expected to lead it. Weeks after the event, clips circulated online. Some showed her pause, her nervous glance, the small crack in her polished image. But many more highlighted the passion in her unscripted words. People began to talk less about Kim Kardashian forgetting her White House speech and more about the message she delivered once she found her footing. History is not written by those who never falter. It is written by those who falter and keep going. And that day, inside the White House, Kim Kardashian reminded us that vulnerability can be more powerful than perfection. In the fight for prison reform, every voice matters, even the ones that tremble, even the ones that forget. Because forgetting a speech is not what defines a person. What defines them is whether they stand back up, whether they speak anyway, whether they let silence turn into truth. Kim Kardashian did exactly that. She came to the White House not as an entertainer, but as an advocate. And despite forgetting her words, she left with something far more important. She left as part of the story of prison reform in America. This was not about Kim Kardashian alone. It was about the millions of prisoners whose voices could never reach the halls of power. It was about the mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons waiting for someone, anyone, to speak for them. And on that day in that room, when the cameras were rolling and the world was watching, a woman who had built an empire on image found her purpose in imperfection. The memory of her forgetting her White House speech will linger, not as a moment of failure, but as a symbol of the messy, unpredictable human fight for justice. A reminder that change does not come neatly packaged. It comes through stumbles, silences, and unplanned honesty. In the end, perhaps history will not remember the exact words Kim Kardashian delivered that day. But history will remember that she was there, that she stood inside the White House and fought for prison reform, and that in forgetting her speech, she remembered her cause. And that more than any perfect performance will be her legacy.